Shalom, YouTube. Shabbat Shalom. This is Yirmiyahu Weeps, and I am going through what's known as the law, or the instructions, or the Torah. Okay, and I am going through the Ten Commandments right now. I believe that I am on number 8. No, I'm on number 9. Oops. Number 9. Okay, I went through the previous 8. And the first primary 2 in my previous video, and I'm going to be going on number 9. You will not be an obliterating witness against your fellow human being, obliterating by making substitutions for, misrepresenting, or slandering. So you are not supposed to say that this person did terrible wrong when it's actually someone else. You're not supposed to misrepresent them. I think it's somewhat self-explanatory. Anyways, going on. Number 10. You will not desire with the intent to possess your fellow person's house. You will not desire with the intent to possess your fellow man's wife or woman's husband, or his male servant or his female servant, which would be, again, near the equivalent of employees, or his ox or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your fellow human being. So that desiring with the intent to possess would be kind of seeing something that somebody wants, so you start conniving and figuring out how you're going to take it. I don't think it necessarily means I really like their house, I wish I had a house like it. I think it's more of I see what they have and I'm going to figure out how to take it from them in some way. That's not right. Anyways, now, other instructions that I've found in Torah, because there's instructions as far as like sacrificing, but those have to do with the temple. We don't have the temple, so we can't do those. Then there's other instructions on what the community is supposed to do if somebody violates the instructions. You know, what happens to them. We can't really do that because we're not, at least I'm not living in a community that follows Torah, that does Torah, so it doesn't apply to me. So there's instructions that apply nationally, and instructions that apply ritually that I can't follow. They don't apply to me. Then there's other instructions that say apply to women. Well, I'm not a woman, so I can't do that. Apply to young children. Well, that wouldn't make that doesn't apply to me. I'm not a young child anymore. Don't think I am. Anyways. So I'm just going to go on with the instructions in the Torah that I've found that apply to me. Here, I'm just going to read this paragraph from my creed that I think says it rather well. While trying to follow his instructions doesn't rescue any of us, the applicable guidelines are still needed and in effect, the covenant having been renewed, and reveal our need for redemption. Such regulations include not consuming blood or eating animals not considered food. There are certain animals that are not considered food, such as pork or pig products, shellfish, catfish, octopus, rodent, rabbit, humans, etc. And that etc. would mean things like, say, camels or horses or things like that. Not having sex with someone or anything other than between a man and woman only related through marriage, and not when she's having her period. So sex is supposed to be between a man and a woman that are committed to each other in marriage, and not supposed to happen when she's having her period, because that's when her reproductive system is cleaning itself out. Keeping oneself from all non-Yahweh instructed religious practice. So anything that you're doing religious-wise needs to be focused on Yahweh, and not just focused on Him, but since it's focused on Him, it needs to be what He's instructing you to do. It'd be kind of like you have if you're married, you have a wedding anniversary, and you decide that you're going to celebrate your anniversary with your wife in a month different from the one that it actually is, and you decide that you're going to get her, say you really like Sloppy Joes, and she hates Sloppy Joes. So you decide that for her anniversary present, you're going to give her on some month that's not even in the same month that your anniversary is, you're going to give her a bunch of sloppy joes. Happy anniversary. How is she going to feel about that? Don't think she'd like it. Anyway, so that's kind of the way I see that it is with Yahweh, is that if we're trying to do religious celebration, well, if it's not according to him and what he wants, it doesn't mean anything. Going on. I said keeping oneself from all non-Yahweh instructed religious practice, being honest and fair in business practices, and wearing tzitzit, which are the little white, actually tassels worn at the four corners of a garment, and they have a blue thread in them. To remind oneself of Yah's instructions and identify as one of Yahweh's people. The reason that it's given in the scriptures is to identify, to remind you of Yahweh's instructions so you don't forget them. But I think it would also apply as identifying you as one of Yahweh's people. If you see someone who's wearing these tassels, since most people do not wear them, you would look at them and you would say, oh, you keep Torah, you follow Torah. Now, of course, you can't completely follow Torah because there's rules and guidelines that don't apply to you, but you do the ones, you try to do the ones that apply to you. Makes sense. So, when someone says the law, those are the instructions that I've found that would apply to them. They're talking about devoting yourself to Yahweh, not following other gods, not making idols or bowing yourself down to an idol, or say replacing Yahweh with a car or a person or something like that. To honor his name and his character and who he is, and not replace him with a false representation or something like that. Honoring the Shabbat by having that as your rest day, as the day you're not doing work, you're not buying anything or paying for anything. I mean, of course, if you're if you have electricity or something like that, seems to be unavoidable. I guess there can be some kind of disagreement about that. That's my perception. But it's a day that you're kicking back and just enjoying being with Yahweh, and enjoying being with other people that honor Yahweh, and other, like your family, and people that you care about. And there's also honoring your parents and ultimately honoring Yahweh, which I think is good and makes for good relations. To not be doing wrong to people, not murdering them or unjustly taking their life, or intentionally doing them harm, to not be having sex with somebody that's not your husband or your wife, to not be ripping people off, taking things without their knowledge and consent, to not be spreading slander about people or saying lies about people, and to not want something that somebody else has so that you conspire to get it. That's his 10 Commandments. I think they're really reasonable. I think they make sense. I think he's put in us, we have a conscience, and he's hardwired, at least most of us, I think he's hardwired us to obey those instructions, to know that they're good, to see that they're good. And then there's also the instructions of don't eat things that he hasn't designated as food. Now, some of these things, I've heard that some of these animals are like bottom feeders, and then since you are what you eat, an animal would be what it eats. And would you want to eat an animal that's designed to eat crud, designed to eat stuff that's not good for you? Well, that doesn't make any sense. I guess there might be some debate on whether or not these animals are bottom feeders, they are trash cleaners, but the Creator says, I didn't design that to be food for you. So I think it makes sense not to eat that stuff. Not to have sex with somebody other than your spouse, which if you're a man would be your wife, or if you're a woman would be your husband. And not to have sex when the woman's on her period, because her body's doing maintenance, keeping yourself from all religious practice that Yahweh does not approve of. That's not from Yahweh. That's not Yahweh directed. Because if it's not Yahweh directed, then it's meaningless to him and it's worthless to him, and it violates what he wants. Being honest and fair in business practices, well, that's good. And then wearing tzitzit to remind yourself of Yahweh's instructions and identify as one of Yahweh's people. I don't see a major, how there could be major issues with that. You know, you might not like the style or whatever, but I guess you just have to suck it up. Anyways, yeah, so that's what I see of Yahweh's instructions. Now there's things like, well, I'm running out of time. There's things like where there's instruction of build a fence around your roof. Do we need to follow that today? What's that about? Well, from my understanding, the ancient culture, the roof was basically like our patio. It was a place that people would go and hang out. You put a fence around the roof, so you're eliminating chance that somebody's going to fall off and there's going to be a terrible accident. It's just basically, it's like saying don't run around the pool. You don't want people to slip and fall and have an injury. It makes them, you know, it's a bad situation. So it's trying to avoid bad situations like this. Then there's also the rule of don't cut the corners of your beard, which would be right over here. Don't tattoo yourselves for the dead, and don't cut yourselves. Okay, these were all common, from my understanding, these were all common pagan practices. And if they were doing these things, you would be identifying yourself with these pagan practices, and Yahweh's saying, don't do that. I don't want any part of that. You're not to be imitating the pagans. When you worship me, when you adore me, you just do these things that I've said for you to do. And I think they're all very common sense, legitimate. Those are his rules and regulations that I understand. There may be some more, and if you know of more rules or regulations that Yahweh says in his scripture that you think we should be following today, please let me know. Those are the ones that I know of that I have found to be applicable. Now I know that there's people that say, well, the law has been abolished, the law has been nailed to the tree, which is very interesting. In the Greek, what's called the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, there's the Greek word for the law is nomos, and it can refer to either man-made law or Yahweh-made law. It shows no distinction. So the only way you can determine which kind of law it is by context. Okay, by examining the text. And what I've found, I don't know if there's many of these laws, that would be repealed, that would make sense to be repealed, say such as you will not murder a human being. Well, has that been nailed to the cross or whatever? No, that doesn't make any sense at all. So I don't think any of these instructions have been done away with. I think that some of them are not currently applicable, like the rituals and the national instructions, since we don't, at least I think many people don't live in a Torah observant community, nation. So I think when it's talking about the things that are written against us, it's talking about, since you don't follow Torah perfectly, you're a Torah violator to whatever degree, that the things that have been written against you, the writings that say that you're a Torah violator, that's what's been nailed. Okay. I have a little bit of time. I'm just going to go through. I really wanted to go through all of these scriptures. Maybe I'll do it in a future video. But there's, well, here, I'll read this one first. This is Yoshua speaking in Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 to 19. Don't think that I've come to abolish, which means to wrongly interpret, the Torah or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, which means to wrongly interpret, but to fulfill, which means to interpret correctly. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth pass away, not one yod, which is the smallest letter, or one sarif, which is the smallest stroke of a letter, will pass from the Torah until all of it has fully come into existence. So anyone who breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches others to do so will be called least in the kingdom of... Oh, I have to stop. I hope I'm not over. Shabbat Shalom, have a good life. Thanks.